Oh, hello, and welcome to the final panel of our Healthy Black Summit 23, Healthy Black Family. Sorry, I'm getting a little delusional. It's my fifth panel today. So this is our Healthy Black Family 2023 Summit that we're doing. This is our second annual State of Black Health that we're doing on Martin Luther King Day. So happy Martin Luther King Day to everybody that's watching. We hopefully you engage in some sort of social justice activity today. I know there was a lot of marches. There's been a whole lot of activities, but even if you just reflect, even if you don't get involved in activities, just reflect on the impact that Dr. King has had on this country and on this world to the point where he got a holiday. With that being said, it's also January, and every new year there's this phenomenon called the New Year's resolution, and it seems to be this renewal. December 31st at 11:59, and then all of a sudden on January 1st at midnight, our lives are going to be suddenly transformed, and we're going to start doing all of these wonderful things. We're going to make all these wonderful changes in our lives. And then some research says as low as 43%, some research says as high as 60% of people quit their New Year's resolutions by the end of January. So what we're here to do, and what a more popular New Year's resolution is, I'm going to eat better, and I'm going to exercise more, and I'm going to lose weight. And we said, okay, if we're talking about helping Black families, we understand that the cornerstone, all of our health begins in our mouth. What we put into our body is going to be a significant determinant of how healthy or unhealthy we are, because our food is our fuel. We put bad fuel in, we're going to have bad outcomes. We put good fuel in, we're going to have good outcomes. It's not that black and white, but I'm simplifying it a little bit. And we've got a panel of experts that can really break down the nuances of how that whole process works. So, as the saying goes, I save the best for last for this panel, because we're going to help you keep that resolution beyond 2023, because we're going to make it a lifestyle change. It's no longer going to be a resolution, because you're going to be eating healthy and you're going to be doing what you need to do on a daily basis. So you're going to move on and make another resolution that you may or may not keep at the end of 2023. So a couple of housekeeping things, and then we're going to get started to this fantastic panel we have assembled for you. So number one, let us know where you're watching from. We'd like to know where people are watching us from all over the world. And we have people that just do watch us from South Africa and the Caribbean and the UK. And so please let us know where you're watching from. Number two, you know somebody that needs this information, and there's a lot of people that need this information, because we got all the statistics of people that are overweight and obese. So there's a lot of people that need this information, right? Myself included. If you know somebody needs it, share it on your page. Tag a friend, let them know, because we want to get this out as much as possible. And finally, if you have some questions, we've got the top-notch panel to be able to answer those questions for you. So we're going to get to your questions as much as possible in the time that we have allotted, and really start you on a path to living healthier in 2023 and beyond, you and your family. So I know you didn't sign on to hear me drone on about what I don't know, because I'm not a doctor. I'm just just lucky enough to be able to moderate these panels. So let's get you started and introduce our panel. So I'm not going to touch it, Dr. Renee, because I know we'll go back and forth. There we go. So, as you know, the first person is Dr. Renee Matthews. She has a wonderful show here every Thursday at 6 p.m. called Ask Dr. Renee. That's 6 p.m. Eastern. Ask Dr. Renee. And she is a fantastic host here and a wonderful, wonderful resource for all of Black doctors. So that's Dr. Renee. And then we have Dr. Yolanda. Dr. Yolanda had a program called Mind, Body, and Stress. And we're starting that back up in February. So we're excited for the return of her program here. And you know, Dr. Yolanda is she's a board certified pediatrician and bariatrician. So she can talk about helping your kids and talk about helping you get better and get healthy and get fit. The person, my good friend, and you've seen, Dr. Monique. Dr. Monique had our show called Vegan-ish that we did on Thursday evenings, and we talked about eating healthier, that flexitarian lifestyle where you're not fully vegan, you are vegan-ish, so you can mix in a little meat. But we talked about eating healthier and starting on that more plant-based journey, because we know that if you talk to any doctors, they said the healthiest way to live is to eat a more plant-based diet. And her show is really designed to getting that kickstarted for you and give you tips and techniques on how to do that. We've got Dr. Sylvia. Dr. Sylvia is a wonderful. You're bariatrician. Are you a bariatrician, Dr. Sylvia?
Yes. Integrative obesity medicine. Yep. Got a
You
bariatrician
heard that?
training.
What? Did y'all hear that? Integrative obesity medicine. That is Dr. Sylvia. And she also is going to be starting a show here soon on blackdoctor.org. We are excited to have her here. It's called Embrace You and Weight Loss Tips and Techniques. And so we're just really excited about her getting started here on Black Doctor, because you're going to get to see a lot more of these ladies in the future. And of course, we have Dr. Alicia. Dr. Alicia, I do not have your information, but I know you're fantastic because Dr. Renee referred you. So I know you've got to be special. If Dr. Renee says you're good, that's why I was like, we'll put her on. We're good. So Dr. Alicia, tell us about who you are and why you're here on this panel.
Yes, I'm a board certified internal medicine, obesity medicine physician. I actually practice at Wellstar Medical Center in Douglasville, Georgia, and I'm the host of the Back on Track Achieving Healthy Weight Loss podcast.
But, look, I'm just going to toss the ball up. This is like a dream team. I'm just going to toss it. Okay. So let's get it started. So we're going to start with you, Dr. Sylvia, because I know everybody can jump in. But we'll start with you, Dr. Sylvia. I'm going to ask you the first question. So there has been a significant amount of health conditions connected to being overweight or obese. How many conditions, and what are some of the more common conditions that can be exacerbated by excessive weight?
Sure. Well, thank you. That's an awesome question. Happy to be here on King Day. I'm a daughter of Atlanta. So, anytime I get to celebrate Dr. King, and especially with all these wonderful doctors here, is an awesome thing. Now, first thing I want to clarify, though, we no longer use the word obese, because that characterizes people based on their weight. So we have what we call people-centered language. So we say a person with obesity, right? Or a person with diabetes, because you are so much more than your weight. So I think part of it is shifting the language about how we talk about this disease, because it's not a lifestyle choice, it's a disease, right? It's a medical condition that is really complicated. So we say people with obesity, but there are over 200 medical conditions associated with obesity. And that's because this accumulation of excess body fat causes a lot of inflammation and a lot of dysfunction all throughout the body. So it's really more than a cosmetic issue. It's really about your health. And so that is why we're so passionate about helping people, especially our people with this condition, because we are disproportionately affected by this disease.
Wow, over 200. And that boggles the mind. What are some of the ones that are more common, especially the ones that are impacting our community disproportionately?
Yeah, certainly hypertension, right? Mental health conditions. That's something we don't talk enough about, but there is an interconnection between depression and anxiety and having the disease of obesity or having excess body weight. Cancer. So postmenopausal women, increased risk of breast cancer, diabetes, insulin resistance, even reproductive health issues like PCOS, right? People talk a lot about that, and we see that in the Black community as well, or polycystic ovarian syndrome. So there's so many diseases, heart conditions as well. We're coming up on Heart Disease Month. Esophageal cancer. The list just goes on and on. Pretty much, and that's what really drove my passion for getting into this disease. I started out as a primary care internal medicine physician, and once I learned about the actual science behind obesity medicine and saw all the connections, I'm like, we're not treating the root cause. We really have to get to the root cause of what is causing all this dysfunction, right? We're giving people medications, but we're not really giving them the tools to release that extra body fat that's so toxic to the body and causing all these other diseases like diabetes, hypertension, insulin resistance, cancers, all of that. So that is really what drove my passion.
So Dr. Shelley, what role does our culture as Black people play in our eating habits poorly, tendency to lead more towards being overweight or suffering from obesity?
So our culture has a lot to play in it. I think if we think about, we just came from the holidays, and I don't know about you, but with the holidays, we have all these comfort foods, the collard greens that have the fat back or pork in it, the macaroni and cheese that has all types of cheese, not just one. We got sharp, we got cheddar, parmesan, everything's in this macaroni and cheese. And then on top of that, the ribs. So a lot of times in our culture, when we get together, it's a surrounding food. And it's not like a healthy food. I mean, yes, they may have a salad or they may have some green beans, but it's not just green beans by itself or broccoli by itself. It's green bean casserole where you have the cream of mushroom, the onions on top. So it's a lot of saturated fat that's in our food, and we associate food and that at comfort food as a way of togetherness with our family. And so in our culture, specifically the African American culture, we went to church, after potluck. We all brought foods that weren't necessarily healthy. When we go to family engagements, Easter, all these different holidays, we have this huge plate. Like I've talked to people that have like 50 different plates and they're not quite as healthy. And so we cultivate that in our minds that comfort food is better. And comfort food is a way that we enjoy our family. But when I see my patients in the clinic and they're like, well, they have all this food and, I'm going to gain weight during Thanksgiving, I'm going to gain weight during Christmas. I tell them, well, remember, it's just one day and you can choose which food you put on your plate. And just because you put less food or you choose the more healthier options doesn't mean you still can't enjoy your family. And so a lot of people feel like they have to gorge themselves in order to enjoy. So they associate that when in actuality, you don't necessarily have to do that. And you have to kind of work through that mindset. The other thing about our culture is that we actually love people who have big hips. They have this song called The Brick House, where you have this voluptuous hips. And so we put that on a pedestal. And so when you see people who are thin or people who are have a smaller BMI and you are looked down upon, sometimes you want to add that extra weight. And I'm not saying, like Dr. Sylvia said, obesity is a chronic disease, and people like myself who struggle all their life with it, and it's harder to kind of lose weight. But sometimes we put a certain appearance on the pedestal, and it makes people want to gain weight in order to meet that particular frame.
So Dr. Yolanda, Dr. Alicia just brought up that ugly 3-letter word, BMI. So help our audience understand what is BMI, and should we be paying attention to it when we're talking about how healthy or unhealthy we are?
Well, that's actually a good question. So BMI stands for body mass index. And the answer is yes and no. So there are, there are culturally some biases when it comes to BMI. So basically, exactly what Dr. Shelley was talking about, Dr. Alicia was saying, we often value certain things in our community and our culture over others. But part of that is because there is a difference in density, right? Between fat and between muscle and so we have found that, and I think I had this conversation on my show about how we actually, history shows us that the BMI itself is biased. And when it was developed actually using the standard of, I believe it was either Scandinavian men or Swedish men, but it was European, and it was men, first of all. So women are already disadvantaged because we have deposits of fat that most of y'all like, by the way, in the form of breasts and and hips and things like that. So we were already disadvantaged by that general standard of BMI. But the point is, it's just a guide, and we should be looking at it as such. We use things like screenings, and then sometimes if someone's BMI is supposedly over the standard, but they're not necessarily, they don't have excess fat, or we can determine if they're within the fat limit, then we shouldn't hold specifically to BMI. pediatrician, for instance, oftentimes our young people are sort of held to a different standard. And the overall understanding is, just the numbers, right? If you're just dealing with the numbers. So 18, below 18 is underweight. Between 18 and 24.9 is normal. Okay, whatever normal means, right? Because again, this is going to be relative. Between 25 and 29.9 is overweight. And then greater than 30, you then get into levels of obesity. So you have a class 1 and a class 2 and a class 3. And I don't think that people are going to necessarily remember all the details. So I'm not going to give them those specific details, because these are things that you should be talking about with your primary care physician. Know what your BMI is. Understand if it's relative for you, but do not beat yourself up. We're talking about grace and giving yourself grace. Don't beat yourself up about a BMI, but understand what it is and how it affects you specifically. And some cultures are different. Some people's bodies, like I said, body habitus is different. So we do want to pay attention to BMI, but we don't want to hold ourselves hostage by our BMIs, because there are other things, waist circumference, again, fat, your percentage of fat, other things that we want to actually pay attention to that I think are just as important as BMI.
So, Dr. Sylvia, that makes me ask the question: can you be overweight and healthy at the same time?
I think absolutely. I'm going to be very controversial. I'm a nerd. I'm a cool nerd, I must add. But you know what I mean? I love studies and research. So there's a lot of discussion out there in the obesity science space, and they talk about metabolically healthy obesity. That's like the medical term about it. And they've looked at what, to Dr. Yolanda's point about it, like if a certain person is over the BMI, the body mass index, but they do not have obesity related conditions that I talked about earlier, or any indication that they're not healthy from a metabolic or internal medicine kind of perspective, then, and they're still at a high performance level, then does it really mean that they're unhealthy just because they're at a higher weight? So the answer is yes. I think to Dr. Yolanda's point, and what we're talking about here with culture and the biases that are in the BMI and why there's so much backlash, is because we have to address the racist and sexist past of the BMI. I'm just going to put it right out there. And actually, I just co-authored a paper for the Obesity Pillars magazine as well, journal, where we actually answered that question. BMI, is it time for us to change the BMI standards? And there've been some actually wonderful Black female researchers who have looked at this. So Dr. Fatima Cody Stanford out of Harvard, who's a leader in this field, she and her group actually put forward a modified BMI chart for Black people that changes the cutoff for the BMI. And we have to remember, lastly, because I could teach all day on this, all right? So I'm gonna keep my, look, I'm gonna be like the church folks, how they be like, I'm gonna keep it brief, I'm gonna lay it right here, I'm gonna lay it right here. So, but no, seriously, but we have to make sure that we remember that BMI is a population-based tool, right? So it was never really meant to look at just one person, because it doesn't make sense to tell one individual that you should, like, you're at this weight, right? And then you go to them and you say, oh, you should actually weigh like 107 to 169 pounds. Like, it doesn't make sense if they're showing you all the signs that they're healthy. Really is meant to be a suggestion that, okay, after you're at this upper level, then we should start screening for your individual risk factors. So where is your fat? Is it mostly in the middle, that visceral fat around your organs? So that's waist circumference. Is it mostly visceral again, so around your organs, or is it subcutaneous? Most Black women, we have subcutaneous fat under the skin, and that hasn't been shown to necessarily be harmful when it comes to risk of obesity related diseases. And then, do you have any metabolic conditions that might put you? So I think about it like, what is your healthy weight? And that's how I look at it individually. And then, what's your happy weight? What is the weight that you feel like yourself and you look good in, right? No, really, we don't have that conversation enough. Right. And that's why I think a lot of times, like, our patients aren't hearing us, and people, there's all this backlash because, like, I look good, I feel good, my whole community looks like me, but you're telling me I need to get like this and be skinny. So we need to have these open conversations and dialogue. All right, and I'm gonna land there. I'm gonna close here. Like, your chief will say.
Right. Sure. Go ahead.
And just to piggyback on Dr. Sylvia, and I think as physicians, we need to actually be doing individualized weight loss planning on the person, looking at the person as their own person, because everyone doesn't gain weight just by eating too much or not exercising. Some people have weight, just like Dr. Sylvia was saying, because they have PCOS, they have thyroid disease. Other people gain weight because they're on depression medications. So we need to look at our patients as an individual and treat them as such.
And then we got to remember about hormones, steroids, medications that, throw off your hormones and your steroids when you get menopausal, that conversation. Again, you've been pretty much healthy all your life, and then you begin to gain weight at menopause, and then people start having these really big concerns about it. And the question is, how much should they be concerned? How do we talk to them about it? How do we guide them through it? And I think, to your point, Dr. Alicia, I think it's our responsibility to really talk from our personal, everything that I talk to about my patients in my community is from my personal, journey. And especially as a parent, what do I do? I'm assuming I'm the only pediatrician on here. So what do I do in my home for my children that has worked? And often that has more weight than just about anything, because I can send parents to nutritionists, and the first thing they do is come back and say, it was a little 24-year-old white woman telling me that they wanted me to do this in my house, and my kids aren't having that, right? So I would then go, well, this is what I do, right? These are some things that are, I've adapted some recipes, like you're talking about mac and cheese, or you're talking about rice and things. So there are things that I put quinoa, I'll put certain things that we're going to eat, but instead of putting it over rice, I'll put it over quinoa. I figure, if my kids will eat it, anybody will eat it. So I give all kinds of suggestions, but I just think we have to personalize, just as you say, Dr. Alicia, we have to personalize our conversations with our patients so they really know we actually deal with this too. Most of us have our own stories. And if we don't personally deal with obesity, with having had the disease of obesity, we have family members, we have folks that we're, struggling with and that we're helping along that journey. As transparent as we can be, I think is the most helpful for our patients.
So, Dr. Monique, when I was in grad school and I was going through counseling, when I was in grad school, my counselor told me there's a difference between rational knowing and emotional knowing, right? Rationally, we know we should be eating better. Rationally, we know that vegetables are the best thing that we should be eating. We should be eating more fruits and vegetables, less meats, all that stuff. Emotionally, I want that 3-cheese macaroni and cheese snuggled up next to 2 pieces of fried chicken and a handful of greens. So how do we reconcile the rational and the emotional and find some common ground where we can eat a more plant-based diet we know it's healthier for us, but we can't unlearn those years of just kind of poor decision making when it comes to our diet? How do we get back on that track and get on that journey of being healthier with our diet?
Thank you for the question. That's an excellent question. I want to first of all say thank you for having me. I love being on this all-star team. Happy New Year to everyone, and kudos to you, Ellis, for talking about counseling. That's a topic for a whole other day. But kudos to you for saying that. As a Black man, I applaud you for that. That is a loaded question, right? But the simple answer is, and as I've talked about on the show Veganish, is it really starts with mindset. You can unlearn things, but we know culturally there's something called comfort food. Why is it called comfort food? Because it's comforting, right? That mac and cheese you talked about, of which I have a vegan version in my cookbook. That's a complete shameless plug. But those foods that you I think back to my times with my grandmother, my being in the kitchen with her, with my mom. We all have family recipes, or, we get together on holidays. Oh, make sure Aunt so-and-so brings the potato salad, or so-and-so's got this. Those are ways that people show love. They feel like they belong. And it's that's where the emotional part comes in.
Yeah.
The rational part is, okay, I went to the doctor. He told me my weight's up a little bit. My blood pressure doesn't look good, my cholesterol. And I know there's a relationship, right, between what I eat and what these numbers are looking like. How do I make those two work together? So it starts with mindset. And mindset includes knowing, first of all, naming the issue. Right? Don't run from it or just say, oh, well, that's just how we always ate. We're just going to continue that way. Well, we used to do a lot of things a certain way, right? Before electricity and the internet and all kinds of things. So, as things change, so do we. And so, but that's hard. That can be a hard part. So I recommend, or I encourage people to be mindful, to be purposeful, and like we've said before, show yourself some grace, but also surround yourselves with others. Have a community where where those behaviors are encouraged. If you've got friends that all they want to do is go out and eat at steakhouses, then maybe don't go out and eat with them every week. You limit your exposure to them, okay? But if you've got friends who say, hey, let's go take a walk around the track, I'll meet you there. So you can, and then gradually over time, I think it's 21 days of doing something, it becomes a habit. And so I think just being purposeful, I use in one of my other books, I use this analogy about finding time versus making time. And the analogy is, if you're walking down the street and you look down and you find $100 bill, that took no part. No, you just have to be in the right place at the right time. Versus if you have to go to the bank to get that $100 out of the ATM, you have to make time for that, right? In some way, it may not be a big deal, but you got to go to the ATM. You've got to, it's not just blink and it's there. Same thing with your meal planning, your exercising, whatever, drinking water, even if it's something as simple as drinking water, making time. That means scheduling that exercise. There you go. That means scheduling that exercise, scheduling what you're going to eat. And you don't have to become fanatical and OCD and overwhelmed with it. If it's just one day, if it's just one meal, that's a start. So making the time versus finding time, because we find time to get our hair and our nails did. We find and make the time for those things. So when people make their health just as important and just as much as a priority, then those things will fall in line.
Dr. Shelley, so we're talking about that finding time, making time, mindset change. Okay. So one of the mindset changes that we all agree with before we even came on the air is diet has become a dirty word, right? Because when we associate the word association game, when we hear the word diet is, I got to pick one of these Atkins, one of these diet plans, which are plans. They're not really diets per se. They're plans versus your diet being what you eat all day, every day. That is your diet, what you put into your body. So how do we shift somebody's mindset from recognizing that their diet is what they do every day versus something that they do for a limited period of time to lose weight because they got a high school reunion coming up, or they got a vacation to the Bahamas coming up, and they got to look sexy in that, whatever they want to do, whatever their goal is. How do we do that? And then also, Dr. Monique talked about habits, right? And so I've been doing a lot of research on habit forming and how do we sustain good habits. One of the things it talks about is building rewards along the way, right? So how do we, when we're talking about changing our diets permanently, what are some of those rewards that we can include along the way to keep us on that path and not have us backslide back to the comfort foods that make us feel good? I know that was a lot of questions there, but I know you're smart. You do a podcast, so I know you know how to handle that.
Oh, yes. No, you're absolutely correct. And I'm going to start with your first question as far as with the habits. So like you were saying, we all have, and I like what Dr. Monique was saying, is that, we have to make time instead of find time for things. We have to make a priority. The other thing I would say is that sometimes you have to start small. You may be busy, you may have family obligations, work obligations, but if you start with just one thing that you're going to change, whether it's drinking water, whether it's eating healthier or having, exercising a little bit, that's going to make a huge difference in your lifestyle. Now, going back to the diet, when we think of diet is short term. It's like you said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to deprive myself and lose 10, 15 pounds so that I can be looking great for my reunion or for my wedding. But then what happens after the wedding or after that event? The weight comes back because you go back to your old lifestyle. But if we change our mindset, just like Dr. Monique was saying, to where this is a lifestyle change, we will see that what we're eating, yeah, we may have a piece of cake one day, but that's just one day. That's just one meal. That's not everything. We just go back to how we're eating. Personally, I've struggled with my weight since childhood. And it wasn't until I shifted my mindset from diet to lifestyle change where I was able to not only lose weight, but maintain it. And so in our minds, as I try to tell people, don't say diet, say nutritional plan. Say lifestyle. This is my lifestyle. Right. I like how Miss Dr. Monique is talking about flexitarian. I love plant-based food, but some days I might have a piece of chicken and it's okay. It's okay. I'm going to go back to my plant-based lifestyle because I just feel better. I just feel better with it. And so I think if we change our mindset to focus on just I'm doing this for forever, it makes a difference. I have patients who will come and ask me, well, doc, what's the best diet I should be on? Is it low carb? Is it keto? Is it whatever? I say, it's the one you can stick with, because you may do keto and you may lose 30 pounds. But then when you're like, man, I need a vegetable in my life, I need some more greens and more fiber, you're going to basically kind of gain that weight back. So it's better to start with something that you are able to maintain and continue, because we're talking about lifelong health. When we look at people who have high blood pressure, diabetes, we see the complications that happen 10 years, 20 years down the road. So if you can control your medical conditions with diet and exercise, your nutrition and exercise alone, we're reducing your risk of complications down the line. You're not going to have the kidney disease. You're not going to have the amputation of the legs. You're not going to have the cataracts and the diabetic changes of the retina, because you have been able to manage it with that lifestyle.
And if I may just piggyback on that, all of what Dr. Shelley said, but one of the things I talk about is diet, as you said, is a 4-letter word, but I also take it a little further and say diet with a capital D is a 4-letter word, because it's usually Atkins or South Beach or whatever, right. Keto, versus diet with the lowercase d, which is, as you said, it's just your daily nutrition. But the other thing is, as Dr. Sylvia said, she's a nerd. I'm in that club too. And I like anagrams. I'm a word nerd. So one day I looked at the word diet and I said, why? Let's make it an acronym that stands for Daily Intentions to Eat Triumphantly. And what that means is every day, like you said, like we've all said before, you may miss the mark one day. That's okay. The next day is a new day, but you have the intent, which brings in that mindset, the little bit of planning, not being haphazard, but being purposeful, to eat triumphantly for this daily battle, right? For this thing called life. So if you're going to use the word diet, I encourage you to kind of reframe it that way: daily intention to eat triumphantly, and hopefully that'll help you kind of reframe as you're planning your plates, your meals, and so forth.
So I just want to say something. I think we're all nerds. And I think we all love this, right? Because everything else, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's the one. So I love everything that's being said. I mean, I was the same way, cool nerd. All my friends went one way. I went to the AP classes, and then we met at lunch. So one of the things I was thinking about as you're talking is, you had asked Alice about rewards, right? Like, what are some of the things that you do to reward yourself? So I think what Dr. Shelley and Dr. Monique were talking about, and I'm sure Dr. Sylvia would agree, that you may have something a day. You can even plan to have something that might not be on your daily, diet or nutritional plan. Actually, there's something called carb cycling. You can actually do that. You can plan to have something that's not necessarily the thing you always eat, and then come back to your regular nutritional plan. What's good about that is, one, you're not constantly starving yourself or restricting yourself so that it then takes over. The other thing is, you do a meal, not necessarily a whole day. It would be great if you just did a meal, because one meal does not throw you off. Sometimes when you do a full day or a weekend or while you're on the cruise, then you actually throw yourself into this space where you're so deprived of the carbs or sugar or processed or whatever, that your body is physiologically responding to that, and it becomes difficult. It's kind of like being off the on the wagon, right? And then you fall off, and it's okay to fall off with one thing. But when you decide you're planning a whole weekend or whole week, it becomes a little bit more difficult to get back on. So it's better to just plan a meal or a dessert, or like you said, that thing. But but what I was thinking about with the names and the words is I'm the same way. So we were talking about culture, right? And some of the things that we do culturally. And I talk about the fact that we need to change our idea of what is our foods, right? Soul food, right? That's that thing, right? Soul food has to be the smothered, overcooked greens with the fat back in it. It needs to be the fried chicken and actually, so my book is Dr. Yolanda's, I have soul food therapy, and I changed soul food to savory, organic, unprocessed, living food, because the whole point is when something is savory and it has herbs and spices, you don't have to put a bunch of salt and sugar in it. If it's flavorful, you don't need all the salt and sugar that tends to be the problem. So it needs to excite your palate. It doesn't have to be sugar and salt. Organic, everything doesn't have to be organic, but some things do need to be organic. I used to think I didn't like celery. What I found out is the celery that I was eating had so much pesticides in it that it actually was bitter, and I didn't like celery. I started eating organic celery, and I'm like, oh, it's sweet. It's actually good. It's not tough. I actually like celery. Processed food is killing us. We all know it, right? And also we're spending a lot more money, and there's so many things that we can actually do and that we can use that's fresh that we don't, and it costs less. And then living, stop cooking your food to death. We don't need to cook greens until we get pot liquor. We can actually just saute some greens and some with a little olive oil, right? A little onions, a little bit of garlic and some seasoning, and keep them a little bit crunchy, nice and bright green. And it's so much better for you than how, Big Mama and them cook greens. We don't have to do that anymore. Like we said, we have advanced, we've progressed, we know a little bit more. And so we need to just progress with those times. But anyway, that's my little spiel. But, I think this is the Cool Nerd group, and I'm loving it.
I love this discussion. Ellis, could I say something?
Sure, yeah. Y'all all sat at the same lunch table. I promise you, y'all all sat at the same lunch table. Just yes. So, Dr. Sylvia, give us your point, then I'm going to ask you a question right after you get done.
Okay, sure. But I just love this whole discussion. And what I really like is that we're reframing, right? We're shifting that narrative and shifting how we think about foods. And one of the key things, because we talked a lot about mindset, we really need to release a lot of the shame and the blame around our food. And what I mean, let's stop labeling our foods as good or bad. What I say, is it helpful or is it unhelpful, right? And the example that I always use for this is like at 11 p.m. at night, broccoli is not helpful for me. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to be bloated. I'm going to have gas. I'm not going to sleep well. And then tomorrow I'm going to crave more sugar, and I'm going to eat more sugary things because I didn't sleep well. And then my cortisol is up and all of that stuff. So we really have to realize, how are our foods affecting us? And rather than judging them, saying, oh, this is good, this is bad, because what it does is it keeps putting you in that cycle where you restrict yourself and feel like I have to be really perfect, right? So in my book, which is called Embrace You, Your Guide to Transforming Weight Loss Misconceptions into Lifelong Wellness, when I talk about this, it starts with release perfectionism and embrace your progress, right? So a lot of us, we go back and forth, right? I'm on a diet, I'm off a diet, I'm eating perfectly, I'm eating good, I'm eating bad, I should eat this, I shouldn't eat that. And that just keeps you in limbo back and forth. But really, to the point, we can have a little bit of those treats and those rewards along the way as well. And the rewards don't always have to be food, y'all. We don't always have to reward ourselves with food. Like, we're just so used to, like, in elementary school, right? When you read books, you would get Book It. We used to have this thing called Book It, and you get to go to Pizza Hut, or you get good grades, you get ice cream. Like, Dr. Yolanda talks about how we learned that in childhood, like, rewards always have to be food. They don't always have to be food. Like, today I rewarded myself by going for a 20-minute run right before I got here. Now it's been a journey. I've been on my journey for 8 years now. It didn't start like that. Before, my reward might have been like, okay, I'm going to have like sparkling water with berries, something like that. Or I'm going to call a friend. I'm going to download that new CD. CD, look at me. I'm going to download that new album and then listen to
You went back.
myself.
You went before CDs. Album. You went to an album. You got to say download.
I had the cassette tape recorded
it.
the radio.
Stream it.
But we need to use non-food rewards. You understand what I'm saying? Because too often, if you're tying it like I worked out, so now I get to have this food, you're going to set yourself for that same diet mindset, and it's eventually going to lead you back to where you started. So those non-food rewards.
And you can't out-exercise a bad diet. That's the other thing. So when people think they're going to reward themselves with some food because they did a little bit of exercise, and if you really compare the two and you've just burned 150 or 200 calories, but then you want to go eat a 600-calorie meal, apparently that's not going to happen, right? But people just don't recognize that they can't out-exercise it. And then when I say bad, that word bad is just simply meaning, think about the food you're eating. You can't reward yourself with something really big thinking, oh, but I'm going to exercise it off. Our bodies don't work like that.
Think about it like money. You know what I'm saying? Like, I like thinking about it like money. Like, if you overspend, you're not going to have any money left. So if you only have $200 in your bank account, because that's what you worked out for, right? How are you going to go now and then eat $1,000 meal? Like, you can't have the 24-karat steak. You know what I'm saying? You didn't earn that. You don't have the money for it.
I love it. And that's a concept that people can really understand. It's your bank account. You can't overspend what you don't have, right? And we do that. We do that with our calories. We overeat, and then we did our little 20-minute walk, ain't gonna do it, because that little 80 calories, especially if you've got a wearable device, because it'll tell you how many calories, and then if you go to the right restaurant, you'll see how many calories are next to that meal you just popped in your body, and you'll see it ain't adding up because you didn't do 1,200 calories worth of workout. I know you didn't, because I know how hard that is to do.
That math ain't mathing.
With that being said, so as I was telling you, I've been kind of in my secondary nerddom. I think we're all kind of similarly nerds here. I read this book called Atomic Habits, right? And it talks about how we build habits. And so it's really not those dramatic changes that are going to make the most changes in our life. It's those smaller changes, intermittent changes that we do one at a time, right? So when we're talking about New Year's resolutions and how do we keep them, right? We're talking about we're going to automatically make this wholesale 180-degree change in our lives. And we know that's why we quit. That's why we stop, because it's hard to do. The momentum has been going in one direction for it could be decades in one direction. You're going to change it overnight. That's not realistic. So what we do is we say, okay, we're going to have, Dr. Monique talked about it on the show, Meatless Monday, right? Or if it's just one meal that you say, I'm going to eat no meat in this meal, or I'm going to eat a whole plant-based meal for this meal, or I'm going to do that every Monday. And then once you get comfortable with that, you do it Monday and Tuesday. So we make those small changes, and then over time. So you might not see that 10-pound dramatic weight loss in 2 weeks where we're dropping water weight and we're wearing the garbage bags and we run it up and down the street without doing none of that stuff dramatic. But those little incremental changes, not only one, is more sustainable over time, but number two, it's something that you will see it's something that you can keep up because you're not making this dramatic wholesale change. So Dr. Shelley, what are your thoughts about the incremental changes versus the wholesale dramatic change?
I think you're absolutely correct. When we think of how we're able to maintain and stay consistent, it's with the small changes, and just making the small changes. I have one patient every month, or every 2 weeks, she'll think about what's that next change I can make. And then she'll make it, she'll master it, and then she'll go on to the next change. And over the last 2 years, she was able to lose over 100 pounds by just making the small changes. And the next thing I want to say that for our audience is that they should focus on what are their goals? What is their why for doing it? Sometimes you mentioned the person that has the trash bag on and running and sweating, and eventually you see them out there, and then maybe a week later they just stopped altogether. And the reason being is because of the unrealistic goals. They suspect that, hey, if I'm doing all this, I should lose at least 10 pounds within the first 2 weeks. And when they don't hit it, they get discouraged and stop. So if we, number one, have a good why on why we're trying to lose weight, whether it's not just I want to look good for this particular event, but I want to live a healthier lifestyle. I want to improve my high blood pressure. I want to improve my diabetes. And then, like you said, have that incremental changes where we're making changes over time. It'll allow us not only to lose the weight, but to stay consistent and maintain it afterwards.
And one of the things I like to say for
Also,
kids,
yeah.
just, you know, oh, go ahead. Well, this is quick.
No, no.
One of the things I do with kids is adding something before taking something away. I think a lot of times when we start with suggestions of what people should do, the first things that they think of is, oh, I can't have this and I can't have that and I can't have that. And so what often works for me as a pediatrician is I add before I take away. And you're like, well, what do you add? The first thing I add is actually water. I'm like, look, I want you to drink as much water as you can. Now, eventually you're not going to be able to drink all of the liquids, right? So you can't drink but so much. So I'll give them an amount based on their weight and their age. I'll give them an amount of water I want them to try to drink every day. It eventually is going to overtake the juice or the soda or any of the other stuff that they are drinking because they're trying to get that other part in. But it's very interesting how psychologically some people respond to having you take something from them. I have had in a meeting with a family, the first time I say that we might take something or reduce it, like immediate tears, immediately, just sort of break down because it was the thing that they thought they were so tied to it. It was their favorite. And so the moment that they're thinking and we haven't done it yet, we're just talking about it, and they'll actually start crying. So I've stopped and I started now with adding first and then adjusting a little at a time. And it made a world of difference. So that's another thing that sometimes psychologically people are really having a hard time. So Meatless Monday is like, oh, it's just that one day. Every other day, you can still have, what you have. Then doing it in those increments really helps. But it's just really interesting how people respond to you removing something. It's very interesting.
I just wanted to piggyback on what Dr. Shelley said as far as when we were talking about staying on track, staying motivated. It also has to do with setting realistic goals. If you're trying to lose X amount of weight, I used to tell patients all the time, you didn't gain this weight overnight. You're not going to lose it overnight. So to say, I'm going to lose 10 pounds in 2 weeks, that's not, and then when that doesn't happen, because it's not rational, first of all, your body's it's not set up that way. You start starving yourself. We're actually programmed to hold on in times of fasting or starvation. So you're getting frustrated. You're checking that scale every day. You don't see the weight falling off because your goal was wrong. I did a video with BDO for Toyota, and we talked about setting your GPS. And so part of that was, if you start off with the wrong map, the wrong plan, you starting off with, I'm going to lose all this weight right now, you're not going to get to the right destination because your path is already, you've mapped out the wrong route, right? So versus setting realistic goals, working with your doctor, maybe a dietitian, 1 to 2 pounds a week, whatever is determined healthy for you based on your health conditions. Then that way, when the weight starts to come off, or not, but then you can, it's easier to kind of recalibrate, rethink things versus throwing your hands up in frustration because the pounds didn't just melt away. Well, they didn't just come on overnight. So it's not realistic to think that they're going to just disappear overnight either.
Yeah, and I think I love that, Dr. Monique. I think it's also really important to focus on those non-scale wins, right? The scale is just one form of data. It's just one form of data. And so we get a lot of times, and I've gone on a 40, 60 pound weight loss journey myself and maintained it for the past 8 years. So you can get so caught up on the scale that it will derail the whole process. So I really like to help people see what are your other wellness goals? What are the other things that you want? Because you will see those maybe earlier. I also think if we're going to look at data too, making sure you're checking inches everywhere because people lose weight in different places, right? So it might be your arms, it might be your waist, it might be your hips, might be your thighs. And so sometimes seeing those inches being lost earlier on can be helpful because sometimes there may be a scale lag. And then if we're not looking at scale, I feel more energetic, I'm sleeping better, my sex life is better, I don't crave sweets anymore, whatever those other non-scale wins are, that is really important, or else you're going to get discouraged. Like, we're human beings, right? So just really want to remind people of that as well.
And understanding that when you build muscle, muscle is heavier than weight. So sometimes the scale is deceiving, so all of those wins are great wins, but don't look at the scale. You're looking at the wrong thing. So recognize that, but it has to change. It will change eventually, but guess what? If you're doing certain exercises and you're making muscle, then let's relax, because the muscle definitely weighs more than fat.
And I would also say, make sure that you take pictures. Take pictures of your starting weight, and then take pictures along the way, because you're not going to notice that you're losing weight. It's going to be other people that look at you and be like, I haven't seen you in a couple weeks. Have you lost weight? And the reason is you're with yourself the whole time. So you don't see the change, but you're looking at that scale and like, that scale's not moving. But it could be like Dr. Yolanda said, it's because there's more muscle. So take pictures, look back, enjoy the journey, because this is a journey. You're going to have some obstacles. You're going to have some some speed bumps, but know that if you just keep going, you're going to get to the goal. You're going to get to your destination.
Ooh,
And this
boy,
is
y'all
why
some
it's helpful. Oh, go ahead.
boy, y'all got me charged up. All right, so I'm gonna do some rapid fires. We're getting close to the end of this program, so do some rapid fire questions. So I know they're kind of sounding like absolutes, but we know there's no absolutes. So I'm just gonna say that up front, because I know y'all are doctors, and there's gonna be okay. So we're gonna go around and say, what's one of the worst foods or things that you can eat if you're trying to lose weight? So give me one thing that that's really, really bad. I won't say worst, because what that's really, really bad if you're trying to lose weight.
I'll go processed foods. Yeah. So your TV dinners, even if they're like fat-free TV dinners, you should avoid those.
All right.
I'll say anything that's breaded, fried, glazed, stuffed, smothered, loaded, crispy, creamy, or battered.
That's more than one, Dr.
Because vegetables can be healthy until they're not, right? So that's my tip.
I say high in sugar, and I say that with so much pain because I have a sweet tooth myself. But like, if it's really high in sugar and fake sugars, even those artificial sweeteners and things like that, they are not helping you.
So I mean, all of those are great. I think that the preservative one, the processed one, is really good, because what people don't know is certain preservatives, like your body can't process them, and they're toxic, and they become toxic actually within your fat cells, and then you can't actually lose those fat cells. So that's really important. But one of the things I would actually add as a caveat is actually something Dr. Sylvia already said. It's when are you eating it too? So it's not like the one thing. Some of this stuff might not even be that bad if you're going to eat it early in the day, and then you're actually going to get some exercise. So it's kind of difficult to say absolutes, like don't ever eat that. The question is, how can you eat it? If you really need to eat it, if you're at a party, a wedding, a birthday, something, the glazed donut is there. Do you eat half of that glazed donut early in the day and make sure you work out? I don't know. There's other ways to eat it, but don't eat it at night when you're about to go to bed. Absolutely. So I think there's a couple of caveats to some of the stuff that you can and can't eat.
I just say sugary drinks.
Yes.
No, I'm a Midwesterner, so no pop. And
we soda. We got some Atlantans on here.
I know. And y'all say Coca-Cola, yes, but yes. So no sugary drinks.
And
Diet
Cokes
in the South.
I'm sorry, Diet Cokes count too. So get rid of the diet.
And the Coke Zero and all of that stuff. Yeah.
And then stop thinking you can substitute tea for the soda. So that's another. So people are like, I'm not going to drink soda, so I'm just going to have some tea.
Sweet tea.
The sweet
green tea,
exactly.
You're good. The sweet tea.
And all these juices, concentrated, the juices, especially as a patient. I mean, kids, parents think the juice, like it's not a juice of a orange. This is concentrated and is high in fructose corn syrup and all these other things, plus the colors so yes, just when we say no sugary drinks, we don't just making sure they realize it's not just sodas. There's all of that stuff. Energy drinks.
Energy drinks and those workout drinks. If your child is drinking Gatorade and it's in the morning, you're doing something wrong, right? Because it's high in sugar, it is high in sodium, and it is poured into the body, even though it doesn't taste like it, because I've had it, even though it don't taste like it. If you're not working out, there's no reason for you to be drinking Gatorade and Powerade and all these other things. There's no reason. None, because they're designed to be a post-workout drink, not everyday drink. So that's my soapbox. Second question is this: what's a good ingredient that you could use to replace something that may be more unhealthy? So we're going to give people some good ingredients that they can use to keep that flavor. Black folks, we like some flavor in our food. Okay, we don't like no bland food. Y'all saw T'Challa on Saturday Night Live. We don't like bland food, so we like to have some flavor. So what are some things that we can put into our food to give it flavor that's going to be healthier for us versus like the salt and sugar?
I like what Dr. Sylvia had
No
mentioned.
fear,
Is water like water that's infused with fruit. Like, it's actually, if you don't like the bland taste of water, you can use water infused with fruit, so you can get that sugar. You can get that little bit of natural sugary taste, and you're drinking water.
So Ellis knows this is a subject very near and dear to my heart. But if I have to pick one, I'm going to say smoked paprika. Smoked paprika elevates the flavor of so much. And it, that instead of those smoked turkey wing or necks or backs or whatever it is, and you can get that same smoky flavor, a similar smoky flavor with smoked paprika and even liquid smoke. So that's my recommendation.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is cinnamon. So if I have to choose one, so I do the same thing. Stuff that's savory, and I have a whole chapter on this, obviously, because that's what the book is about. But stuff that's savory, I'll do like the cayenne pepper, the smoked, things like that. But something that should be sweet, you can make it much sweeter with cinnamon, cardamom, one of those things. But it also lowers your blood glucose, and it makes you more sensitive to that sugar taste, so that you actually need less sugar. So I'm all about cinnamon. I put cinnamon in coffee. I put cinnamon in everything. So I love some cinnamon.
I feel like I'm in class, when they're like, they took my answer. That's how I feel right now. Everybody took my answer. Okay, but anyway, I used to be a soda-holic, right? So like one of the things that I transition from soda, I use sparkling water. So Dr. Shelley said water. So yes, but sparkling water really helped. But a lot of people say, the sparkling water tastes like nothing, right? But so how I transitioned to it, I did half water, half sparkling water, and gradually half juice and half sparkling water, and gradually cut down the juice till I got used to the taste of the sparkling water. And so now, even though this one I did a fruit infused one, I put like a tea packet in here, but now I can like take sparkling water plain. I can even tell the different flavors, like San Pellegrino, Perrier. I can tell the difference between them because I've refined my palate to it. So I say everyone's struggling with soda, which is a big thing that I see a lot, like especially for adults. It's very addictive. One thing we did not talk about is food addiction, like how biologically that pleasure reward cycle, these really bioengineered foods make you crave it and want it. Then you have the psychological part with it. So when it comes to soda, that's one of my recommendations. Start with half sparkling water, half juice. And I know we don't want to drink a lot of juice, but gradually phase out the juice, like maybe taper it off every day, put a little bit less, till you're just at the plain water, and it will really help. And you can also throw some fruit or berries in there too, frozen berries in particular.
I use no salt. Sometimes there's food. Some people, I'm not speaking about myself, of course, but they shake the salt shaker without tasting the food first.
Right.
I don't know who does that. And so spinach, green beans. So I use no salt, and that's what it's called. That's the name of it. It's a brand, no salt. And you couldn't tell me I didn't have salt.
If I could add one, I like. God, my mind just went blank. What's my yellow one, Dr. Monique?
This is Dash.
Turmeric.
Turmeric. That's my one. I like turmeric. It's an anti-inflammatory, and it goes in a lot of different things. You're making stews and meats and everything like that. It doesn't, adds a little yellow color, but other than that, it's really not you don't really taste it very much, but it adds a heartiness and a savoriness to the food. And then you get that anti-inflammatory added to it, and you don't have to use as much salt. Give yourself some grace on that period because you're going to that transition. And then, but give yourself a couple of weeks. But I promise you, your palate will become sensitized to salt and sugar very, very quickly. Your body has a state called homeostasis. And y'all correct if I'm wrong. I got a panel full of doctors. So if I step off something wrong, slap my hand. Slap my hand on it. Okay, homeostasis. Your body's going to regulate. It's going to go to what it is. What you're putting in, and then if you start putting in something salty again after being off of it, you're going to taste it in those foods. You're like, this never used to taste salty. Why? Because you're cutting back on it. So give yourself some time, and it will level out. You just get, oh, this is so bland, and you go back to shaking all that salt. Just a little bit, pull yourself out. All right, so we're right at our time. So what the last thing we'll do, because we could go on with this, and I've already got plans for new shows. You know, my mind's always working, so I got to have y'all back again. We got to do it, and we're going to be doing some other shows as well. So last thing, I need everybody to do a shameless plug, right? So this is shameless plug time for the stuff you got, because we got book writers, we got podcasters, we got people with shows, we got everything going on. So this is the shameless plug time. Talk about what you're doing and your work as you continue, because it's not just this panel. You all have been putting in that work outside off of this panel. That's why I invited you to this panel, because of what you are doing outside of this. So how can people get in contact with you, get your stuff, learn how to eat more vegan, Dr. Monique, learn how to eat soulfully, learn how to embrace yourself? Dr. Shelley, your podcast blog, but I know you're going to tell us about it too. So we'll start with you, Dr. Shelley. How can people reach you, and what are you doing? Give yourself a shameless plug.
Yes. So like I said, I am the host of the Back on Track Achieving Healthy Weight Loss podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. And what I do is I help women with kind of getting back on track or getting started with their weight loss. And so I do have a free online course that you can plug into at thriveforlifechallenge.com/kickstart. And so feel free to look. And if I just said that too, let me say it one more time. It's thriveforlifechallenge.com/kickstart. And you can always go to my website at drshelleymd.com and to learn more about it. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Dr. Monique.
Thank you, Ellis. So yes, thank you all so much for your questions, attention. It's been a pleasure. You can find me on all social at Dr. Monique and at Physician in the Kitchen. I'm wearing my my chef's jacket because I just came back from shooting a cooking segment, but Physician in the Kitchen, all social media. My book is Doc Fix My Plate, the Physician in the Kitchen's prescriptions for your healthy meal makeovers. And you can get that at docfixmyplatebook.com. And I also have an online course called Plant-Based Your Diet. It's a great intro to the world of plant-based eating. So I look forward to hearing from you all.
Dr. Sylvia.
All right. Well, thank y'all so much for a delightful hour. I love this panel and all the audience too, just hearing your comments and y'all checking up from all over. So wonderful to share this time with you. I can be found on all social media at Embrace You, YOUMD. My specialty is really helping you get clear on those hidden things that may be getting you stuck in a loop with why you can't lose weight and keep it off. I want to really help you discover those things, and then also give you the tools you need, body, mind, and spirit, to be able to keep it off. So you can take my clarity quiz that is on my website, embraceyouweightloss.com. Go to the connect part and you can connect with me there. You'll also see my book, Embrace You, Your Guide to Transforming Weight Loss Misconceptions into Lifelong Wellness. And if you're in the Fort Lauderdale area, I will be co-hosting the Mom's Oasis Retreat, and we'll be doing sessions like this, talking about emotional eating, how to break free, how to build self-care practically. So we have a one-day retreat that we just opened up, so you can still join us there. So that's all on my website as well. But I look forward to connecting with you, and remembering, whatever you do, always embrace you, because you're unique. There's no one size fits all to this weight loss thing.
I love it. Dr. Yolanda.
All right. Well, again, thank you for having me as well. This is great. I mean, this hour went by so fast, and I loved hearing all the comments and really connecting with everyone. So I look forward to doing that again. And there's a few things I have out, so I'm always like, which one? So anyway, we talked about this soul food, and this is Dr. Yolanda's soul food diet. And we talk about how savory, organic, unprocessed living food saves lives. And I really, that book can be found. So my website is Dr. Yolanda MD. I can be found on most social media as Dr. Yolanda MD as well. My Facebook is my government name. So Yolanda Lewis Ragland is my Facebook page. But one of the things that I'm really, I sort of focus on, and the show that I have on BDO is body, mind, and stress. And one of the things we kind of didn't get around to was how stress really interplays with how we either lose weight or don't lose weight or hold on to weight. And in our community, in our culture, it plays a much bigger role than we often give it credit for. So we're often talking about food and food this and food that. But if you're releasing cortisol half the time, if your job is very stressful, if you're dealing with a very stressful home situation, there's all kinds of stuff that's happening. It's very difficult for your body to process the food the way it should. And then people feel guilty, and then it just, sort of snowballs. So really talking about that and how to relieve that or how to address it. And then I do a lot about supplements and nutrients because, truth be told, a lot of people don't get everything they need in their diets. And so what are some of the other ways that you can sort of supplement those, sort of your daily routine? So all of those things I would love to, talk to people about. And if you have a situation where it's your family, your young ones, your teenagers, your children, then that's definitely where I like to help because I do a lot of family care as a pediatrician.
As Ella said, my show is every Thursday evening at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 3 o'clock Pacific, and 5 o'clock Central. And it's the Ask Dr. Renee show where we talk about whatever we need to talk about. I have written 2 books, but my books are in the allergy and asthma space. The weight loss book is coming because, as most of the people that watch my show know, that I have shrunk literally before you guys' eyes. So we're down about 70 pounds, I think, since the first time I ever showed up on blackdoctor.org. So, yeah. And of course, on my show, we'll be talking about that too, eventually. But yeah, thank you, ladies. This has been fabulous.
And Alice, I'm so sorry. I forgot one more thing. I mentioned cooking. If you want to join me in the kitchen, because I help busy households enjoy healthy eating, healthy plant-based eating without impacting their hectic schedules, please go to cookingwithdrmonique.com and join me in the kitchen virtually. Thank you.
Y'all are fantastic. Y'all just, and I can tell y'all, each one of you were overachievers because you had work, it's just
away.
Like they say, you do too much. Like we just want to help. We want to save the world. We want to help y'all. Let us help you.
I love it. And this really speaks to the theory about Black women are the backbone to saving the earth, right? Because we got it. Black women are really key in that. So that's my one caveat I want to add, because this has been a fantastic panel, a fantastic discussion. But I want to speak directly to my brothers out there. You have to put in the work as well. It can't be your mom's, it can't be your spouse, it can't be your sister. You have to put in that work with them. Heart disease is number one killer. We know prostate cancer is preventable. All of these things that are stemming, hypertension, all of these things that are stemming, that are impacting our health. Brothers, we've got to be participants, active participants in this process, or it's not going to work. We can't have a healthy Black family if one of us aren't present completely. So we've got to do what we need to do to be there for the women that have been standing with us since the creation, since we first set foot in Africa. They've been with us, and we've got to be there for them in full strength. So step up for your mom, step up for your sister, whatever woman is in your life, step up for her. Do what you need to do to live and eat healthier. I want to thank everybody for joining us here today. We had 5 fantastic panels today. We didn't even talk about alcohol because I know that's a whole other subject. Woo, boy, sugar. Okay, anyway, so That means we got to have all of them back. We got to have a whole nother discussion about that. And you see all the programming, and we could do more programming. We're going to do more programming about this. So please, please, please take care of yourself. Get your mental right. Do the 4 things. I think we had another show that talked about eat, move, think, sleep. Those 4 things, if you eat properly, if you're moving, and you don't have to say exercise, just movement, back on the floor, walking up and down your steps, dancing, some sort of movement. If you're thinking properly to lower your stress levels, lower that cortisol, all that stuff that's in your body, and getting the proper amount of rest, those 4 things are going to have to supplement that lowercase d diet that Dr. Maloney talked about. The lowercase d diet, you supplement with those 4 things, you will see the results, incremental changes in your lifestyle, so you can keep that resolution throughout the year. I could go on, but this is just, I'm full right now. I haven't eaten a bite, but I'm full right now because of everything that we poured out today. Leave us your comments, leave us your questions. We've got plenty going on. We got to plan all those websites and books and stuff, all video. We're going to have that all there available for you all. Thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you next Martin Luther King Day on the State of Black Health.
Thank you.